in 10 years or 5 years from now, there's no code behind most websites.
Yeah.
And the customization is not going to come, for the website itself. It's more going to be, the actual functionality of the thing. That's why I hope, we don't have many people 5 years from now that create like an entire project from scratch with code. Yeah. That sounds like a waste of time. Yeah. But they partner with someone who's a no-coder that builds a thing, and they just extend the platform when needed.
Yeah.
There's actually a really interesting analogy. When I was an investor, I told you our first fund was a mobile-focused fund, and this started in 2010. So shortly after the advent of the App Store and the iPad, and phones are, iPhones are still relatively new at that point in time. We said we were a mobile-focused fund, and it kind of raised eyebrows. They're like, mobile-focused? Like, how can you find deals about mobile? And then, fast forward, and for a while there was the golden years where there was, rapid growth, and nobody seemed to raise eyebrows anymore. It's like, oh yeah, you're a mobile investor. That makes sense. But then there came a time towards the end of that fund when people started raising eyebrows again, and they'd say, mobile fund, how do you find things that are just mobile? And it kind of, as it became ubiquitous, mobile disappeared as a category because it was just became a platform. And in a lot of the same ways, I can see NoCode becoming a platform, like you say. It's a great point.
Yeah. David, let's hear your thoughts on all of this. I know you probably have you probably have some thoughts.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, I definitely agree a lot with Emmanuel's points. It's like a slightly different, nuanced view, and not like, or maybe it's an addition to it. But I think it's going to get a lot more people into software in general. And I think that's both like becoming coders as well as just like understanding, or like, I can't tell you how many people, when I first explained some of this stuff, like they don't even know what the difference between like an app is versus a web app versus software versus like a website, right? And like, so like there's already like a baseline level of like people don't even like in general know what those things are, right? And that's because like it's been gated by like, well, I have to learn how to code. And like an analogy that I like to always think about here is like, like maybe this is just like happened to me in school, right? But like when I got when they were like, teachers were trying to get me to read, right? Like I didn't like to read, right? But then, and that's like similar to like, I couldn't get into coding, right? So I didn't like it. But then like I started reading like, like Harry Potter or sci-fi or like random things like that. And that then like, then got me into that later, that then like, now like I really like that and I'm really into that. So I think it's similar with NoCode in that, like it's scary right now to get into software because you have to learn how to code, and some people just like that's not how their brains work, so they like just immediately turn it off. Whereas now that it's going to be a lot more visual, totally based, and you'll start to understand the principles of like I know a lot more about coding now, like from having used having built stuff on Adalo or in Webflow, like learning Flexbox and things like that like I didn't know what that stuff was, right? But like playing around with it visually, like now I like understand those concepts, or like how a database is set up and things like that. So I think like it'll trickle more people to actually getting in, because it's like an easier like like I guess gateway into the software world than it is today. So then like what that then will mean is you like one will have a ton more like software that's in a totally different way than we think about it, right? I mean, I think a lot of people think like, okay, especially like an app, right? It's like, well, that's like Facebook or like Twitter, like that's the only thing. And there's even like stigmas sometimes around those types of things, like that's the only thing that software is for. And it's like, no. And I think like we're seeing tons of things on NoCode that are like just like helping your personal life out in some small little way. Like I'm sure there's tons of little things on Bubble that like people are just doing for fun that it's like totally a different perspective on like what software can mean and what that can mean for you don't have to like go have a big round and like make some big huge thing. Like you can make all these niche types of software so niche that like it's just for me, and like I just made some like little thing for like my own personal life that like I'm gonna toss away, kind of like making a PowerPoint presentation where it's like, oh, everyone makes those, and then they like they're finished. So I think we'll have a shift in how we view like software and apps, and more people will understand like the basis behind all of those things, which I do also think means like we will get better UX, because the people solving the problems, like the people that are solving the problems are the ones that have the problems. So it'll be easier for them. There won't be that level of like translation from, like I need to pass it from a designer or from a PM to a designer to a developer. And there's like all those level of steps. It's just purely from, your perspective. And, this is an interesting like question too, because, I feel like, so this is like, I guess a slight little plug for something that like a ebook that I've been working on. But if you're familiar with like the Tribe of Mentors, it's basically a book where like Tim Ferriss like asks everybody the same sets of questions. And it felt a little similar to me, and like I think we all have like little bits of like what no code is, like whether from it's like the data perspective or from like the web apps or from voice or from automation. So I was like, hey, what if I ask everybody the same set of questions, and then how can we like figure out like what no code is from that? So that's like something that I've been working on over the last, few months or so. I'm excited for that to get kind of released here in the coming weeks.
As you guys were talking, I think the biggest thing is going to be awareness, just like general awareness that like this is possible now, and like breaking down the learning curve for some of these tools. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people have no idea that this even exists, right? Like if we were broadcasting this out to the masses and masses of people, and we were like, you can literally build an app right now without knowing how to code, people's minds would be blown, just because they never even thought that was possible, right? Or they didn't even know it existed. So I think that's a big part of what's happening, and just like continuing to build that awareness and getting it out there is huge. What were you going to say, David?
Oh, no, it just triggered my, like, I like remember this one, like, it's like a Facebook comment or whatever, but like people like, saw one of our ads and like literally thought it was like propaganda, that like we were like lying to them that like you can do these things. So like those little things like always stick in my mind. I'm like, no, I swear, like I'm not trying to lie. Like,
is this true? Or are you gonna make me?
Yeah. So
no, that's
so it's definitely true that people aren't even aware. And I think, again, I think it's a little bit because like they're not educated enough, because it's been gated so long by like, you have to, learn how to code for 6 months before you can even like get into understanding like the different technical stuff. So,
yeah, exactly. Well, I want to be respectful of your guys' time and everything too. So we're going to jump into Q&A here. I know we're approaching 5 o'clock too. So if any of you guys need to jump off at 5, that's totally fine. But we'll run some Q&A here, and then we'll jump into networking right after this. So there's a tab on the left. It's a networking tab. It's going to start at 5. You can go over there, and you'll be matched up automatically with the other attendees, and you'll be able to FaceTime with each other for 5 minutes, and then it will automatically match you with somebody else. One of the questions here from Albert is, what's the level of security, right, with some of these no-code platforms, right? I'm sure David and Emmanuel get this question a lot too, building out your stuff. Ryan, I'm sure with the data and everything too. If you guys want to really quickly touch on this question, and how are you guys handling that, and how other platforms are handling kind of the no-code security.
Yeah, I can start because that's something we hear all the time. So there are 2 levels here. This is how secure are the servers of Bubble in terms of penetration and people trying to hack into accounts and stuff like this. And then there is how you build your application. So we do our part, with like the usual best practices that people recommend for servers. For the application building, it's a lot about educating our users to set up things in the right way. So when you build a Bubble app, you can define privacy rules to make sure that only the right people, as defined by their account, can see the right data, for instance, so that you don't get access to somebody else's data. We have some warnings, but it is as secure as you want it to be, but you need to spend a little bit of time thinking about it. In our case, we actually prevent you from deploying to live if you don't have set up at least one privacy rule, because to make sure, because people get excited, they build something, and then they don't necessarily think about all the problems that could happen if someone malicious, and you have a lot of malicious people on the web, try to get into the application. But at the end of the day, I mean, I believe in creating open-ended tools. And if someone, wants to have a form where people enter the credit card and then, send it to a mailing list, which is the most insecure thing you can imagine, you can still do it, right? I mean, it's because Bubble is open-ended. We try to educate our users and tell them not to do it, especially, I mean, if they want to do things on purpose, as soon as we get a notification, we're going to remove that. But the more dangerous is someone building an application without thinking about that at first and then getting like an issue. And we try to have as many warnings. But in short, it is very secure. You need to think about it, though.
Yeah, I think. Sorry. Yeah. So I guess I'll preface this by certainly saying that I'm remember I said I'm the designer, I don't know how to code on the team, so I can't get into all the nitty gritty details in terms of that stuff. But I think with what we're seeing is that there's actually a chance for these things to be more secure, in that you are building this level of abstraction in there, and because either you're dragging in a component that's been pre-built and your data models are predefined, that you're actually then able to define those security parameters automatically, and then more secure, so that the developers that maybe if you're using a dev shop, let's say traditionally, or farming it out or something, maybe they wouldn't have done those things, or maybe you're a developer yourself and you aren't up to date with all of the cybersecurity things because I'm just making this specific app for me, or maybe not just for me, but for my use case, and you're not up to date with those things. But I think putting it into package those things in the platforms make it then easier for those platforms to make them more secure, where then those developers don't have to think about those things as much. So I think there's that level to this conversation as well.
Yeah, totally. I would trust most no-code platforms to handle the security better than I could handle it personally as a developer, for example, just because they spend their time thinking about it, whereas I'm not an expert in security myself. So I like to think of it, the comparison actually is when people started moving to the cloud for computing and going to AWS, for example, people always ask the question, what about security? What about security? But in fact, it's way more secure to have Amazon's security team protecting your information than it is to have the server in your office with some part-time person or whatever. Amazon has 1,000 engineers dedicated to that. So I think in a lot of ways it's more secure.
I know we're at 5, so if any of you guys need to jump off, are you guys good on time?
Yeah, I need to jump off in 5 minutes, personally.
Okay, all right, cool. We'll ask one more question then. Isabella is asking, have you guys seen any large corporations or enterprise level companies, Fortune 500 publicly traded companies, using any no-code platforms, maybe for certain elements of their business or different things like that? Have you guys seen any big companies start actually using some of this stuff to build out products within their companies?
I guess I can start. Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I kind of feel bad for these guys because nobody talks about them, but you have a ton of no-code tools in the enterprise space. They're just charging so much money that our audience wouldn't know them. But, Mendix, Betty-Block, or Uncork are actually pretty cool products. And they are trying to brand themselves as no-code tools now. In practice, we never see them as competition because just the price point is so different. We do have, so what we're seeing at Bubble is we have individuals, that played with Bubble or build a side project and then get hired by a big company and then try to get the big company to use us. And so we have sometimes conversations with them. It's not our current focus. It will be one day, but not right now. But the short answer, yes, definitely. I mean, large companies have the same need as other people. They're short on engineers. IT is a bottleneck, and if they can find ways to build things faster, they will use it.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of sort of bottom-up adoption. And this, I mean, the key word here is product-led growth business model, right? Where you see the end users start adopting things. You see a lot of Zapier, for example. I don't know if it's Zapier or Zapier. I don't think anyone knows. You see a lot of Parabola. People building these sort of grassroots things to make their own jobs easier, just on an individual level. And those are starting to sort of bubble up and get adopted by teams. And I think it's just going to keep getting more and more adoption from there.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to look at it is like anything that you're doing today in a spreadsheet and a Google Doc and like on Slack and an email that is like getting sent across multiple collaborators in some sort of fashion, or you're maybe using a product and like hacking it for a process that like it wasn't 100% designed for, right? Trello's like super flexible, but there's sometimes where it's like, I don't know if that was the best flow for that, or should I put it in a sheet, or where should it go type of thing. I think those are like ripe for, hey, like that should be a really basic piece of software. And, in the past, like it would never have made sense to either, if you had an actual IT dev, or if you were a product company that had an actual dev team, like there's no way you would pull them off to like do those things. The ROI like wouldn't be there unless you kept that process going for like 20 years or something to like justify it, right? But now, we are seeing, those types of apps getting built. We're also seeing like the enterprises actually being able to test, new, so not just internal things, but like they're acting like a startup, right? Like where we always talk about, well, enterprises are slow moving and that can be bad. And, I think the NoCode gives them a chance to actually act like a startup, right? Take some initiative to try some of those newer, we have some universities that have run programs that, they didn't really have funding for, but we're able to like get them up and running, on Adalo and those types of things to test out like, oh, how is this going to work, to see whether like this should become a major initiative, at the company. So I think it's like those testing types of things, those internal things. And, I think we'll start seeing that a lot more from, the marketing side of the equations, the people that, are maybe not necessarily, in the traditional tech space, I guess you'd say, doing a lot more of their automation and really tailoring processes. Like we have companies that have totally transformed how they were doing internal feedback at like their massive company to now like doing it like on a simple, like really highly customized web app on Adalo. And then, that triggers zaps to go to different parts of their, parts of their ecosystem, right? So I think the more integrated platforms start having, the easier that is, then the more and more, the enterprises of the world, I think, will start picking those up.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. Real quickly, before we jump over to networking and let you guys go, if you can just share where people can find you, if you want to drop your contact info in the chat. Are you guys hiring? Are you guys raising money? All of that. Where's the best place to find you guys, or learn more, or try out your products? Or if you guys have any special offers right now, feel free to shout them out here.
Yeah, I guess I'll start because I need to run. Sorry. So I mean, the best to find me is probably Twitter. I'll share that in the chat box after this. We're not fundraising. We raised around last year and pretty happy with this for the time being. We are hiring mostly on the growth side and success side, actually, because now we have our core team of engineers. We're pretty happy with the number of engineers we have, and so we're working with them. And special offers. We do have a special offer for COVID-related apps that actually was much more popular than I had expected. That I expected when we launched it, where basically we make the product free for people building COVID-related apps. So that's something. If someone, whether it's sharing resources, like building a community around something, like feel free to reach out. That's something we can activate very quickly. And otherwise, yeah, I mean, thank you very much for having me. That was really fun. I'd share my contact info in the chat.
Perfect. And are you hiring remotely too, or just in? Because I know you're based. Well, obviously, right now it's weird timing, but
yeah, obviously, right now the process would be entirely remote.
But the position themselves, would they be remote, or would you want people in New York?
Yeah, we probably will want people in New York when we can get back. I'm not entirely sure, because we'll see how long it lasts. I mean, if it goes for another 5 months like that, de facto will be a remote company, and then maybe it will be different. But if we go back to the office in a month, I kind of like the idea of having everyone in the same office, especially in the early years of the team.
For sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. See
Bye,
ya.
Manuel.
David or Ryan, if you guys want to.
Yeah. So we're not fundraising currently either. We closed, round earlier this year. Let's see. You can find me. I guess I'll put that in. There's my Twitter there to find that. And then we do have a special deal right now. If you listen to NoCode, no problem. There's a promo code in there, so hit it up and you'll get. I kind of forget exactly what the deal was.
Ryan's gonna drop.
I'm sure Ryan, you can drop in there. I think it was like, yeah, that's what it is. He's got it. Yeah. So a little plug for that podcast as well. And then what was the other questions that you had?
Just where can people find you? I mean,
Adalo.com. Adalo.com. Yep.
Are you guys hiring at all, looking for certain people?
So we're always looking for definitely dev talent. We actually just hired a couple of the other, non-dev people recently, from designers to marketing and stuff like that. But always looking for, really kind of motivated people. And if you're also interested in becoming an Adalo expert and, starting your freelance gig, I'm love to have you guys start, building on Adalo, and would happy to give you the details for that as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And if anyone has can't find anything, just contact us and we'll surely find everything and share it out with everyone for the deals and everything. But thank you so much, David. This was awesome, man.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll see you and Jeremy around soon.
Yeah. For sure.
You got it. See ya. All right. Last but not least, Ryan, where can people find you and learn more?
Yeah, this is like, it's like that or something like that. We're just gonna put it off one at a time. So that's me. Hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on LinkedIn. Website is Zenlytic.com. We're not fundraising right now. We're well along in that. So basically, not doing any fundraising. We are hiring. In particular, we're looking for 2 big roles. One is, growth hacker, marketer type person. The other would be a DevOps engineer in either New York or Denver. Also, if you have if you work with data, if you work with a lot of spreadsheets, things like that, we're still doing a lot of beta testing. So hit us up, and we're looking to get some product feedback on that too.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
All right, everyone. That pretty much wraps it up. Like I said, go over to the networking section, and you guys can meet some of the other attendees that we have on. I'm going to drop some other links in here for you guys. We have some events coming up, the big one being the pitch competition on May 20th. So if you want to get an opportunity to get $1,000 cash, it's going to the winner. So applications are still open until Monday. So make sure that you sign up for that. I'm going to drop the links in here, but head over to the networking section, guys. Thank you so much for joining and being a part of this.